This is the letter Chet, and it has the value of 8. Now, since the number 7 stands for perfection and completeness, the 8 represents more than perfection and completeness. Between the 7 and the 8, a new dimension unfolds. We transcend the first circle, so to speak, and 8 is the beginning of a new level. It's a circle again, but imagine it like a spiral staircase rising up. We enter a new level. Jewish thought describes the Chet as one beyond. Therefore, it's infinity or the eternal. And as we know, the symbol for infinity is an 8 laying on its side. The essence of the Chet is transcendence. And our videos will focus on this subject. It's when a plane finally lifts off the runway and the blue dome of heaven beckons. Now, the shape is seen to be a gateway. A gateway into another higher realm, into an infinite realm. That's supposed to be a gateway. I don't know whether it looks like one, but there it is. There's the lintel and there's the doorway. However, by comparison with the hay that we looked at some videos ago, the Chet is seen to be a prison house, and the jailer is sin. Now, there's an intriguing illustration of this embedded in God's Passover instructions to the Israelites as they emerged from the prison house of Egypt. And we'll spend a whole video on this important and eternally relevant subject. There's also an example of an enlarged Chet in the book of Esther. This is believed to be a codified message that informs us that the king of Persia, where the book was written, committed a particularly serious sin. However, truth is always multi-layered, and the letter also contains hope, a hint of grace and mercy toward the king. God is full of surprises, and we'll look more closely at this in a later video. The Chet, you see, also embodies the ideas of grace. The Hebrew word beginning with Chet is chayin. That's right, grace there. Chayin. And it's also associated with life. Chayim. You've probably heard l'chayim, to life. That's chayim, that means life. So the Chet is associated with grace and life. Once again, the concept of the hiddenness of God is present as well. And it's in the story of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem on a donkey. And I find this so fascinating. You see, the donkey, as it were, carries a message that's coded into its Hebrew name, which is Chamor. Chamor, again, beginning with Chet, all these words beginning with Chet. Chamor, which means donkey. And it's just fascinating, the message that's contained in that story. All animals are special, of course, but probably none more so than the donkey. It appears in the story of Abraham offering Isaac on Mount Moriah, in Moses leaving Midian for Egypt, and, most significantly, in the entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. We'll spend a video on the subject of his entry and the hiddenness of God. The value of 8 provides an almost endless supply of interesting lines of discovery, all of them speaking of transcendence, a new beginning. There were 8 people in the ark. David was the 8th son. And the Messianic kingdom is a wonderful concluding millennium to this world, but it's the eternal order that follows it that's the absolutely new beginning. And this commences at a time when the 8th millennium would normally be starting. No wonder then that the Chet is a gateway and the figure of 8 is the symbol of infinity. Finally, as Christians, we are God's transcendent people. Every biblical and God-made covenant is special,
in that they go beyond any ordinary agreement that men may make in everyday life. Biblical covenants are serious matters. But when we consider that the new covenant, which Jesus ratified by his death on the cross, is the 8th covenant, and that 8 is the entrance into a totally new dimension, we realize that the new covenant is the fulfillment and transcending of all the covenants that preceded it, and is our opportunity to enter into a totally new world, life in another dimension. It's better than the Mosaic covenant. The righteousness of the law is fulfilled in us. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Romans 8:3 following. We are made perfect before God, for the law made nothing perfect, but the bringing in of a better hope did, by the which we draw nigh unto God. Hebrews 7 verse 19. Our new life in Christ begins on a totally new level, being based not on a thou shalt, but firmly on a God has done. It's finished. We now serve him not out of fear of what might be, but out of love for what is. We are literally a new race of people from whom the fear of death and of judgment has been removed because Christ has suffered on our behalf. We are God's transcendent people. For Christ also hath once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened in the Spirit. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18. The 8th covenant in which we are included transcends time and space and is the foundation stone for the age to come. Luke tells us that the transfiguration of Jesus took place about 8 days after the previous narrative, Luke 9:28. It's understood that this event was a preview of the age to come, with the glorified Jesus seen conversing with the 2 representatives of the law and the prophets, Moses and Elijah. When the plane leaves the runway and heads for the blue yonder, that's the world of the Chet.